Hello, everyone. This is It Tastes Different Gaming Podcast, a gaming podcast about all things gaming with three different flavors. I am one of your hosts, Nick Irwin. We also have another host, Patrick Smith.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
And Shane Eisterhold.
How we doing, people?
All right, very good. All right, this is a gaming podcast, and we talk about pretty much everything in regards to gaming. Again, with three different flavors, that means we all have three different perspectives and different outlooks on gaming and things that we all like differently from one another. Of course, there are things that we like that are the same. The first thing we are going to do is we are going to talk about different gaming avenues, as well as we made top 10 or top 5 lists of our top 5 games of all time, as well as our top 5 disappointments or games that we disliked in our top 5 disliked games. So before we get to the top 5 games that we liked and disliked, I wanted to go around the room and see if we could find what do you think is on another person's top 5. So, Patrick, I'm going to send it over to you. What do you think are on both of our top 5 best of all games lists?
Well, on yours, Nick, I think you're big into the retro gaming. You do a lot of the old school retro gamings. I would be surprised if I didn't see like a Castlevania type game on your top 5 list. One of those series of games. And on Shane can never shut up about Final Fantasy, so I think that's going to be somewhat. One of the versions is going to be on his top 5. I bet we will see Final Fantasy there. One of them.
Yes, I believe you're probably right about that, at least on Shane's side of things. Shane, what do you think is on our top 5?
Well, Nick, yours definitely got to have a Mega Man, probably 3. Pat, definitely Barbie horse breeding, or some sort of MMO, maybe just a straight RPG. But I figure it's some sort of MMO. Can't really pick a name now.
Interesting choices. I think personally that on Patrick's list, I think on his top 5, Mass Effect is going to be on there. If it's not number 1, I'd be surprised, but I think it's at least in the top 5. And for Shane's, I do think I'm going to agree with Patrick and say that Final Fantasy VIII is at least on there somewhere in that top 5. Maybe not number 1, but definitely towards the top, I believe.
Oh, you
We're up for some upset.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
I'm married. I can deal with it.
So we'll see who goes. Let's see here. We're going to head and see who goes first here. Let's go ahead and do Patrick. Let's go ahead and start with you. And I'll leave it up to you. Do you want to start with your top 5 games, or would you like to start with your top 5 disliked or disappointed games?
Well, I'm going to start out on a happy note. I'm going to go with my top 5 favorite games. Okay. And I'll kind of start with number 5 and work my way through, just kind of discuss that. So number 5 is going to be Dragon Age Origins. That game sucked me in so many times. I cannot, I tried the game running my very first run through as a sword and board dwarf. And then I played again as a mage, and I played again as a different class. I played that game more times than I probably played most other games on my list. But it definitely was a great game back when it came back out on PC. I played a lot of Dragon Age Origins, and I still play it occasionally. I don't bring it out as much, just because I'm a little bit of a graphics snob, and it dates itself sometimes, even though it's only like 12 years old, or actually 10, 11 years old. So that was my number 5. My number 4 is going to be Knights of the Old Republic. And basically,
KOTOR.
Yeah, I loved KOTOR. That was another one that you could just play different ways. You could play as a light side guy and get all these companions, and play as a dark side and get these companions. And I just love the way that the game basically change depending on your alignment. So if you were good, certain companions would be more aligned with you, and some would hate you, and vice versa if you were evil. Dark side versus light side type stuff. So that was pretty fun and kind of a cool, neat concept when they came out with it. And then it kind of built onto a little bit of the combat style that's pretty interesting, where it paused at the beginning of combat, so you can kind of build up your attacks and then unleash them when you unpause the game. So it was kind of fun.
Yeah, I definitely like that about KOTOR. And also, for those who may have not beaten KOTOR, which you should have by now, the end where you get to pick, where you get to find out that you're the bad guy, basically.
Oh, God, spoiler.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
Yeah, that was.
If you haven't played it, it's an old game. Come on, it's on everything nowadays.
17 years old now. Come on. Yep. So that was like I said, that was my number 4. So there's already heavy hitters in my top 5. So number 3 for me is going to be the original Fallout on PC. That game was the one that I kind of first realized that games are not always for kids, because I remember playing that game thinking, wow, this is pretty brutal and pretty adult themed. Like what kind of games can you go out there and go marry a chick and then prostitute her out and then just do all kinds of stuff that that you wouldn't normally do outside of like a Leisure Suit Larry type game or something,
And that's how Grand Theft Auto came around.
Right. But Fallout was just one of those very grungy and adult games that the turn-based combat was pretty fun, and it was by today's standard, it's still pretty good. I still love to load it up if I can get it to run on any machine, usually without that I have to run an emulator on. So Fallout's my number 3, the original one on PC. So number 2, this was a hard one because I was really tough to make a decision on between my 2 and 1. My number 2 game of all time is Horizon Zero Dawn. The story in that game was amazing. I've played that game multiple times, even though there's not a whole lot that changes, just because of the story. I played through it originally before the DLC came out, and then when the DLC came out, I played it again straight from the beginning because I wanted to experience it all together again. The combat got a little bit repetitive, but still it was just very interesting fighting mechanical dinosaurs and beasts with a tribal type person. It's like tribal type game with dinos that are mechanical, and there's a pretty interesting story about the fall and how it happened and everything. So the story for that game drove it home to me.
Yeah, it's a great game, and it's definitely one of my favorites. Not in my top, but definitely one of my favorite games.
Yep. So you kind of see a theme in my games. I'm very big on the RPG and action RPG type games like that. That type of stuff is what I love to play on there. And my number 1
story element.
Yes, the story drives me, because the gameplay can get repetitive in most just about any game, but if the story can drive you forward, you don't want it to end. And I felt that way about Horizon Zero Dawn. I'm like, oh, it's over already. I want to play some more, And even though, like I said, the combat got repetitive because it was always the same: find the weak spot of the mechanical beast and take it down, or something like that, and then do all the little open world stuff that most of these games are moving towards. My number 1. And Nick guessed it. It's Mass Effect. Making my list, I learned something about myself, that I love BioWare, I guess. I didn't realize how many games were on my
right. Most of your selections are from BioWare.
Yep. I mean, 3 of my top 5 are for BioWare, and then when we move on to the other list, there's some few more things on there. But BioWare seems to be pretty heavy. The original Mass Effect was amazing to me, that you can make choices that have an effect on the outcome of the game. Like, you can get people in your party killed that will not be in the next game, or you can get you can save people that will make an appearance in the next game, albeit they were a little bit cameos, but still, just to do a playthrough and have a character live or die and then play the next game in the series. And there's a cameo about because it puts your save that it would have been nice to see this person, but they died in whatever event that happened. So it was one of those games where it eventually made choice feel like it was real, and you got hooked on characters because you did side missions to progress them and make them feel more like part of the crew and not really just a party member you picked up at a bar or something, So yeah, right. Mass Effect. So yeah, BioWare made 3 out of the 5 of my top 5 games. So it made me realize I didn't realize that I was that heavily involved and loved BioWare games until I made the list, because I don't pay a whole lot of attention to who the developer is usually. I'm just like, oh, that looks like a cool game. I want to play that.
Awesome. That was a great list, and there's a lot of great games there. And I would agree with you on all of those. Those are all great games. The original Fallout I didn't play a ton of, but I have played it, and I do see how, at the time, how revolutionary that game would have been. And I have played it a bit nowadays, but it's a little old, and some of the mechanics are a little dated out of what I want to play in an RPG. But still, the choices and the dialogue and stuff is hilarious and great in Fallout, and especially the rest of them that you said. And I was thinking, we should wait on your dislikes, because I like how this is going. And I think we should come back to you on your dislikes, and we should head over to Shane with his top 5 greatest games of all time. And then we'll come back, and then we'll go do mine, and then we'll come back to our disappointments. So Shane, go ahead with your top 5 greatest games.
Oh, goodness. All right. No crap. I'm a little bit older, so I started a little earlier. Number 5 is definitely Halo 1. Just so many memories on it. LAN parties, and the premiere for Halo 2 had a big tournament and got my butt kicked at the end, but it was still great. Just lots of memories of it. It really helped push shooters on consoles. It did it right. So that's where I would go with that. Number 5, definitely. 4, I got to throw Nintendo in here. Super Mario, the original. I got blisters on my thumb still today from that one. It was just stupid, silly, fun. Me and my brothers just played the heck out of it. 3, I'm going to go with Resident Evil 2. That was my favorite one out of the PS1 era, PS2 era, and probably PS3 era. I really enjoyed story, gameplay, all that. It just all clicked for me. And, except for Leon, he was kind of annoying. But other than that, I liked it a lot. Metal Gear Solid 1. God, that thing was so much fun back in the day. I played the hell out of it so many times just to keep unlocking things like the bandana and the stealth suit and all that stuff. It was just so much fun. And contrary to belief, Final Fantasy was not in my list. Just kidding. It was number 1. Final Fantasy VIII is my favorite.
I knew it.
Final Fantasy VIII is my favorite out of all the Final Fantasies so far. I just love the mini games to it. I love the card games. I love the story. Not all the characters were there, but overall, it was definitely one of my favorites. I still say it's better than 7, but that's just me. And I will throw in a bonus game. Last of Us Part 1, the original for PS3. That game was just such an amazing game. It was one of the few games that really just make you want to just play 24/7 just to find out what happens at the end.
Yeah, I agree with that. I remember I didn't buy a PlayStation, the latest PlayStation when it came out. I bought an Xbox, but when I did buy my PlayStation, it came with like a greatest hits type game, and that was one of the games that were on there. And man, I played the mess out of that game. I loved it from start to finish. It was really good and really made me. By the time I picked it up, there were already rumors that the second one was coming out, so I was hyped. I'm like, I'm ready for the second one. The first one ended. This is gonna be great.
Yep. If you didn't cry in after that first 15 minutes, man, you're a heartless bastard. I sat there sobbing in front of my big screen.
And then, I agree on the Halo as well. I mean, Halo was my first introductory game back into consoles. I'd stayed out of consoles for a long time. And talking about having to learn a controller. I remember playing Halo with my friends and accidentally going, what button does this? And accidentally sticking her in 80 people. And they're like, why are you running away? You'll find out.
That's right.
They got a glowing stick bomb on their back.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the first games, far as an FPS that I played on a console, period. And that just got me hooked. And then they started making them more and more. Rainbow Six 3 was really close to being on my list because I played the hell out of it, and it was just such fun. Even the silly voice controls you could use, breach and clear, yelling at your TV in the middle of the night. That was just a blast.
Yeah, indeed it was. And Halo was the first first-person shooter for me that got me using inverted sticks for the up and down controls. Because ever since then, I would always, up is down is down. And in Halo, I couldn't play that way. I had to invert them for up is down and down is up. And then ever since then, it's the only way I could play first-person shooters or anything with a camera that you can move horizontally or vertically, I mean. So, yeah, definitely some great games. All right, so it's my turn to go through my top 5. You guys did get some of them on there. You didn't specify where they were positioned, but you did announce the ones that were on my list. So on my, I like a lot of old school retro games. So on my number 5 on my list is a game on the NES called Xanadu. Xanadu is a RPG, side-scrolling RPG. This game is just, I've played it numerous times and beaten it numerous times. It's a great kind of niche game. Not a lot of people, I don't think a lot of people played it or really even heard of it. I remember playing it as a kid and just loving it, and I own it today and still play it. And I beat it, I think at the beginning of this year again. So it's a great game. It's just old scrolling, side-scrolling RPG for the regular Nintendo, which was a great game. And then my number 4 is a Mega Man game. But unlike Shane, it's not Mega Man 3, it is Mega Man 2.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, one off. Mega Man 2 is my absolute favorite Mega Man, I think. I do love the Mega Man series in general, and I do love Mega Man X, the X series, and a lot of the numbered Mega Mans at the beginning, 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. But I think Mega Man 2 is my all-time favorite. It's the only one that I continually go back to and play. I do go back to all of them and play them all, but 2 is definitely the one I play the most. So, Mega Man 2, my number 4. Number 3, Castlevania, the original NES Castlevania is my number 3. I do like pretty much all the Castlevanias. The PlayStation 2 Castlevanias are okay. The Nintendo 64 ones are all right. But the original Castlevania, out of all of the Castlevanias, that's probably the one I go back to and play the most. I love Castlevania, any Castlevania type of game, but I think the original Castlevania is my favorite and still is to this day. And that's something I still pick up and play through just when I want to. When I feel like I just want to play something, and I don't know what I want to play, that's typically what I'll load up and play. So, my number 2 is Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger is... What'd you say?
I wouldn't have guessed that.
No? I love Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger is one of my favorite old school RPGs. I wish they would make another one. Even like a full... I really wish they'd make a sequel, but even a full remake of Chrono Trigger would be awesome to see. I just love the RPG elements, the fighting, the story, the whole time traveling portion of Chrono Trigger, going back in time and forwards in time, and just everything about Chrono Trigger I just love, and I wish we would have seen more from that franchise. But they came out with Chrono Cross for the PS1, the PlayStation 1, which was pretty good, but it still wasn't Chrono Trigger. It still had that time traveling and various things like that. But in as much as I do like Chrono Cross, I think Chrono Trigger is my favorite. And then my number 1 is Final Fantasy 3 or 6. It was 3 when it came out in the US, but it's actually number 6 in the chronological order of Final Fantasies. It came out on Super Nintendo. Just one of the best stories, I think, of Final Fantasy there is out there. There's characters that you can not get if you don't go find them. There's some characters you can lose if you don't do certain things. I remember there's one character named Shadow, and you go on this floating island, and if you don't wait long enough, you'll lose him. And I did. I didn't wait long enough. I was too impatient. I was like, oh no, there's a timer counting down, and if you don't get off the island in a certain amount of time, then you lose, and you got to wait till the timer's like almost completely empty before he'll come, and then you can save him and have him for the rest of your game. And I didn't. I left and didn't have him for the rest of the game. And there's other characters that if you just don't go out and search for them, then you won't get. And then, there's the opera scene, and halfway through the game, the entire game changes. From what you've been playing, it's completely different. The whole landscape's different. Everything's dark and decrepit, and it's great. So, and I play that one quite a bit. I always go back to Final Fantasy 3 and just pop it in and play it. So that is my top 5 games.
Well, I respect your decisions. You're not wrong on the Final Fantasy.
No, man. No.
Yeah. Not a disappointment there. I figured it'd be a lot of retro titles on your list. So
I think it was all retro titles on my list.
I was just thinking, I was like, he likes all these Konami and Square Enix games.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And Capcom. You got Mega Man, Capcom. And in fact, Xanadu, I think that was... Shoot, I don't even remember who that was back in the day. But that's my top 5. Yeah, definitely a lot of retro games. That's what I like the most. So now that we've gone through our top 5, now it's time to go through our top 5 dislikes / disappointments. These are ones that, some of these are ones that we disliked. And then some of these are maybe ones that we were just disappointed in.
Loathe.
Right. Yeah. Well. Yeah. That we completely loathe. We dislike, or we're just disappointed in something that we expected it to be, and it didn't turn out to be that way. So we'll go back around and back to Patrick to his top 5 disappointments.
All right, so this list was actually a lot harder to make than I thought it would be. I'm like, I dislike a lot of games, but it's not really, I guess it's hard to remember a game you dislike because I just didn't play it. I played a little bit, or I was like, oh, I didn't like what I saw, so I didn't play it. So my number 5 is actually going to be a cop-out. My number 5 dislike is going to be any board game that's turned into a console or PC game that is single player. That chaps my behind more than anything. Is when I pick up a game that has been a board game, which is a multiplayer thing for friends and family to gather to play, and then that game comes out, and you go to play it with your friends, and it's like, hey, this is a single player game. And you're like, what is this? How is that? Or it's only couch co-op between like one and two people.
As a reference to what he's saying, Pandemic. That was a bunch of horse crap when Yep.
So I'll move on to number 4. So Shane actually picked the game that was on my dislike list. Majority of these are disappointed, not really dislikes. My number 4 disappointing game was Star Wars: The Old Republic, the PC MMO. I thought this game was going to be great. I'm like, it's an MMO. I get to play as Star Wars characters. It's WoW, but it was Star Wars. I downloaded it. I played it. It was great. Got to the end, and I'm like, there's nothing to do. There's no playing with friends like an MMO should be. All the in-game content was kind of, for lack of a better word, it was garbage. You didn't really have a lot to do unless you wanted to play Hutball or do something like that. I'm not sure if you guys played that game or not.
I did. I don't think I got to the end game, but I got pretty far up there. And yeah, it was, being an MMO, it was very set on playing by yourself, basically.
Yes, and so yeah, that was my biggest gripe with that. Like I said, it was a disappointment, not a dislike. I still played the game, and playing through each of the characters single player was good, but it was a huge disappointment to me because I wanted to play it with my friends and play Jedi and Sith with my friends, and that didn't happen. So that was my number 4. I will also mention that was a BioWare game, so I do like BioWare games, but I think that they usually are the ones that let me down the most at times because I have such high hopes for their games. My number 3, this one's probably going to get me in some trouble, but I really was disappointed in The Last of Us 2. The game was amazing for the first half. And then when they switch over and try to make you see the story from Abby's side, it really didn't fit well we already hated Abby. And I'm like, I cannot get behind Abby's character because I already dislike her so much from the events that built up to that. They're trying to make you see things from her point of view, which really didn't fit for me. It would have been a much better game if they reversed it. So if I started as Abby, so I can see what's going on through her eyes, and then maybe swapped over to play the other half. So I was a little disappointed. I was pretty much disappointed when I got to the halfway point when I swapped over. I'm like, well, the game could have ended here, and I would have been perfectly happy and loved the game. But then when they tried to force me to have feelings towards Abby, it really didn't help me any on that side. I was ready for it to be over.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Abby portion, it was the same for me. The Abby portion really just, I just wanted to get through her content, really. I didn't care anymore at that point. Through the first half as Ellie, I did care. And then once it changed over to Abby, exactly like you said, we hated Abby from the start. Once you figure out as the story progresses, you have a dislike for Abby, so you don't care about her trials and tribulations and the people she knows and all her stuff. You just don't care at that point. So,
yep. So like I said, yeah, that one was a huge disappointment to me. If we'd have reversed it, it probably would have went over much better with me, or if it would have ended at the part with Ellie, it would have been better. Number 2, unfortunately, is another BioWare game for me. This one might even be on Nick's list, but Anthem. That game came out. We watched that game for a year, or maybe even longer. We heard about it, and then it was radio silence for a long time, and then it came out. And we got closer and closer and more stuff. And I'm like, this game looks awesome. It's going to be a good little game to play with your friends. 4-player co-op, and we can run around in like suits and destroy stuff together. And it turned out, we played it. It was great until you reached the end of the game where you leveled up, and then there was just no end game content to keep you playing. So I don't know what some of these games think when they come out, if everybody is going to just be on board for PvP and more PvP. But, I like to play with my friends to do things like run missions or run task force or run dungeons or something. But Anthem, great gameplay in my opinion. I like playing it. I played it until I max leveled it, and then just nothing. There was no more to do. So the game fell flat in the end. So huge disappointment for me because it didn't even last a couple of weeks. We max leveled and then stopped playing.
Yeah, completely agree. I do think it was exactly what you said. It had that idea of being the ideas behind it were great, but the execution was just not there for that one.
Yeah. And my number 1 disappointment game broke my heart. It killed me. And I'm going to have to say Mass Effect Andromeda, also another BioWare game. So I love their games, but they tend to disappoint me the most because I guess I have high hopes for their games. But they do a great presentation before the game comes out. You're like, this is awesome. And Mass Effect's my top number 1 love game. And then Andromeda was announced, and I'm like, oh, man, here we go. More of this, get to make decisions, and it affects the outcome of the game and your teams. And then, the game ended. I played it. I beat it. I played it to the end. I could not bring myself to play it again. But when I got to the end and they teased about the Quarians and all this stuff, and I'm just like, oh man, there's going to be more, so maybe they're not going to disappoint me. Maybe there is going to be some choices that had outcomes at the end, and then it just ended. In my opinion, it ended in a bad spot. It also let me down because the game was horrendous with choices and outcomes of your choices affecting your outcome. There was just none of that. It didn't feel like a BioWare game to me. It felt like it had a decent story, but it didn't have a BioWare sci-fi story to go along with it, so that was my huge disappointment. That game really hurt me because I went all out. I I bought the big Mass Deluxe Collector's Edition thing, so and I'm like, I'm gonna support these guys because that's my game, and it was bad. It was pretty bad. I was really disappointed in it. Yeah, that was that, and I do have one honorable mention, and this game is a game that I loathe. It's not a disappointment. It's not a dislike. It's a game I loathe. It's the only game that can get my blood boiling, and that is Golf with Friends. I will throw my controller at the TV with Golf with Friends. So that's the top 5 dislikes. Like I said, the majority of my top 5 is dislikes. 4 through 1 are dislikes or disappointments, not dislikes. But my number 5 was a huge dislike, and then Golf with Friends is a game I loathe. So,
right. Yeah, I would agree on Andromeda. Andromeda was definitely one that I was looking forward to too. Like you, it's not in my top 5, but I am a fan of Mass Effect, and I do like the Mass Effect series, and having it finally come back and just being, and I played it to the end as well, and there were some things I enjoyed about it, but there was a lot of things I didn't, and a lot of things that I wish were there that weren't, like the original game had. I wish it would have just went back to that.
Yep. I felt like they tried to remake Mass Effect 1, but they failed at picking up all the good points of Mass Effect, such as the character development and the party and stuff like that.
Right. For sure. And all the bugs and stuff it had. It had a lot of technical issues.
It did. And I chomped through them because I got it right when it released.
All right. Well, that was a great list, Pat. And Shane, now it's your turn. What is your top 5 dislikes or disappointed games?
Well, first I want to say I want to defend BioWare. I don't blame them. I blame their publisher, who shall not be mentioned, because they're terrible people. But as far as my top goes, I'm going to catch hell for the first one. Number 5 is one of my bigger disappointments most recently, Final Fantasy VII Remake. It was a filler fest. I love the gameplay. I love the story. It's just there was so much filler. There was so much they should have done and could have done, but they didn't, in my opinion. So I was pretty damn disappointed in it.
Yeah. As someone who didn't play the previous ones, I don't know what to expect from the Final Fantasy, but I just recently played the remake, and I loved it, but there was a lot of filler in the game, but I still liked it, not being a fan of the Final Fantasy series like Shane is, but I definitely liked the game, and like I said, I just recently played it, and I was contemplating playing through it a second time. But yeah, there was a lot of filler, but definitely, in my opinion, a good game without having played most of the Final Fantasy series.
Yeah, and I my problem is they could have put so much of the original game, at least on that track of the original game, into this first part, and they're milking this out as much as they possibly can to get as much as they can out of people, and it's dumb because I'm going to end up buying the next one, and it'll be the same way. But that's just my opinion. All right, number 4. I'll probably catch crap for this one too, but Metal Gear Solid 2. I was extremely disappointed watching Raiden's pixelated junk for 20 minutes sneaking across the oil derrick was just. It was like, come on. And then they made me play him for half the freaking game. And I cannot forget the Lila Lula Lay scene that just drove me nuts. The controls and the gameplay were still great, but the story on that one was just way too far, even Kojima far. But anyways, I'm going to have to go with Pat on my third one, Last of Us Part 2. Couldn't agree more with that disappointment. I wish they would do a DLC where you could kind of flip the script and play as Abby first, and then, go to the other part of the story so you wouldn't have so much hate for her before you are forced to try to like her. It just made no sense. But that's just nuts if you ask me. Final Fantasy X, I was very disappointed in. Because the game itself was really good, but the voice acting was so atrocious it was hard not to just mute and just play the game on silence because the voice acting was so bad, and the laughing scene in the water, it was just I just wanted to punch somebody in the face for that one. And then next, and probably everybody will agree with this, Brute Force for the Xbox. It got so much hype. You know, it was Bungie. Bungie made Halo. It's going to be amazing. And guess what? It was crap. I took it back to the store like within 2 hours and begged GameStop, please give me my money. Please. They gave me $250. So that is my list. No, not $350. Only $250. I paid $60. Got $250.
Well, I guess I lucked out on that game. I never tried it.
Yeah. It was so bad. It was just terrible.
It was.
But that's my list.
And just to tie in to Brute Force. Brute Force was actually made by Digital Anvil, not by Bungie.
Or yeah, excuse me. They made God, what was that one before it? Not Halo. Damn it, can't remember who it was. What they made right before that one.
I mean, they were part of like the Freelancer group, weren't they? Didn't they make they were Microsoft Studios owned?
Yeah, Freelancer, and then
one or two of the Bungie guys were involved in it. That's what it was.
Oh, may have been.
I had to go look it up to make sure.
Yeah, they might have been a part of it for sure, but yeah, it was Digital Anvil that made that one. But yeah, that was a horrible game.
Yep.
To say the least.
Just terrible.
But I would disagree with most of your list. Last of Us 2, yes. Final Fantasy X. Voice acting was some of the voice acting was horrible, but
some.
Yeah, some.
Oh my God! I wanted to punch a baby in the face just to go to jail and avoid the voices. They were so bad. Waka's voice was the only one that was tolerable.
You know, Lulu made it all.
Well, Lulu had the big guns, and then Riku.
Yeah, and Riku.
But, yeah, the rest of them just terrible, just absolutely terrible. I mean, it was worse than the voice acting for Resident Evil on PS1, the original.
Oh man, those are classic. No, don't go.
Here, you take this, the master of lockpicking.
You're almost a Jill sandwich. The classics. Oh man, well, that was a good list. That was a good list.
It was the perfect list.
It was a great list. Yes, it was perfect.
Yeah, I got a feeling that we're gonna be like have no say in Nick's list because we're not gonna play like half of them or all of them.
That's probably true. No, there are at least two of them that you played at least.
Well, I know Last of Us will be on there.
It's actually not. I did dislike Last of Us 2, but it's not in this list. So for my top 5 dislikes or disappointed items, my number 5 is Command & Conquer 4. I love Command & Conquer, one of my favorite franchises. As far as strategy games go. But I don't know what they were thinking with Command & Conquer 4. It was just completely different from all the Command & Conquers. I love Command & Conquer 3. I think Command & Conquer 3 is probably one of my favorites. And then we go into 4, and that's kind of when EA came in, and it wasn't a strategy game anymore. It was, but you weren't base building. You were basically had one command center where you just did everything out of, and it was just really weird. And I just, taking a franchise that I love and just destroying it basically is what they did with it.
That probably explains a lot why they haven't done anything much since. When they put out like 2 games since then. Alliances.
Well, they haven't put any out except for the remaster, which is fantastic.
I thought
the remaster of Command & Conquer and Command & Conquer Red Alert.
Well, I think Tiberium Alliance came out and then Rivals after that.
Tiberium Alliance? I'm not.
You mean the Tiberian Wars?
No, that was the old one.
Was that the old one?
Yeah. I don't think they've come out with one since Command and Conquer 4.
I thought there was Tiberium Alliances, and then wasn't there Rivals? What was the Rivals one? What's that one? That one's the one that kind of reminded me of. It had the hexagonal shapes, almost kind of reminded me of. That one was on the mobile devices. That's why.
Oh, that was mobile. Yeah, I played that, and that wasn't very good. It was a mobile game. The mobile games in general, I typically dislike.
That's probably why. Yeah, they haven't done a full-fledged game since the one you're talking about, because Tiberium Alliances was also, I think, a browser-based game.
Yes, it was. You're correct, and it was basically a mobile game through and through. It was a browser-based game, and I did play it too a little bit, but it was. They could have just stuck it on a phone and said it was the same thing. So, it was very much a browser, like just click and let it do its thing type game. So, but yeah, ever since Command & Conquer 4, the only thing they've really brought out, which is a full-fledged Command & Conquer type game, was the remaster that they just did for Command & Conquer 1 and Red Alert 1, which is fantastic. So hopefully they'll come out with, I'm hoping not more remasters. I'm hoping a brand new Command & Conquer that goes back to the originals, or another Generals, which was another great Command & Conquer. So that's my number 5. My number 4 is Fear 3. I love Fear, and I love Fear 1 and 2. Fear 3 was more of a disappointment than a game I disliked. Command & Conquer 4 was one I disliked. But Fear 3 was one that was just a disappointment. Fear 1 and 2 had a lot of, it was a first-person shooter, but it also had a lot of supernatural type things going on in it, and it was kind of spooky and scary. And Fear 3 just kind of threw all that spooky scariness out. It still had the supernatural type elements to it, but it wasn't spooky or scary, because the original Fear and Fear 2 were more a first-person shooter, but also kind of like a survival horror. It had a lot of horror and kind of ghosts and supernatural aspects to it, where Fear 3 kind of threw all that out for more of a first-person shooter type thing. Less survival horror, less supernatural, and more just shoot and kill. Kind of like the Resident Evil franchise kind of did as they moved along in their lines. Now in 7, of course, and the coming 8, they're kind of getting back into that, spooky scariness of it. But definitely, Fear was the same way. Once it got to 3, and that's where they ended it was 3. It just really went into more just shooting than anything else. My next one is number 3 is Castlevania Lords of Shadows 2. I love Lords of, like I said in my top 5, I love Castlevania. And I love Castlevania games. Castlevania Lords of Shadows 2 was just a disappointment. I loved Castlevania Lords of Shadows. I thought it was a fantastic game with a great story and great characters, and visuals and combat and everything. And Lords of Shadows 2 follows the same characters as the first one, but now they've become Dracula in Lords of Shadows 2, and it's modern day instead of the old medieval, Black Plague days of Castlevania Lords of Shadow 1. So you have a lot of just streets and avenues and sidewalks and pavement and things like that. Unlike the first one where you had a bunch of outdoors, grassy areas and kind of like small villages and things. Now it's just cities and you're playing as Dracula basically. And so you have all these supernatural powers, which is great and all, but you're just fighting guys with guns and stuff. And in the first one, you were fighting werewolves and the kind of the supernatural villains, and now you're just fighting people. And so, there were some supernatural things in it, but it was just a big jump from the first one. It was just like, I think they just took it in the wrong direction. It would have been fine if the main protagonist became Dracula and you played as someone else. But the fact that you play as him again as Dracula, it was like, that is not for me.
That sounds like something EA got a hold of and ruined.
Yeah. It was still made by Mercury Stream, which did great games back in the day. I don't think they've done anything since. or in a while. But I don't know what happened to that one. That one just seemed to lose focus. My number 2 actually matches up with Patrick's number 2, and that's Anthem. Again, Anthem, I think, had a good idea. It had a good, they kind of, I think they knew where they wanted to go with Anthem. It just wasn't executed well. It just didn't get there. There was a lot of bugs, a lot of issues, and Anthem just seemed like it was not ready for release yet. There's a lot of games that want to come out as a service where you just play it and it grows over time, and that's fine and all, but Anthem had way too many issues to become something like that, where a lot of features and a lot of functions of Anthem needed to be remade and revamped completely. It wasn't like they had the groundwork and they needed to build upon that, which is those live service games are like. This one was mainly, no, a lot of your stuff is broken and needs to be completely reworked. And I think that's why now they've kind of gone in the direction where they're building Anthem 2.0. So we'll see how that turns out. Hopefully a lot better than the original. Yeah,
I guess it's good luck getting Nick to play Anthem 2.0, right?
I will play Anthem 2.0, and if it, I liked Anthem. That was one I was disappointed with. It wasn't one I disliked. It was one I was severely disappointed in because I really wanted it to be what I thought it was going to be. I thought the combat and the flying was awesome, and I liked that aspect of it, and the looting, but it just had a lot of things that just weren't fleshed out and needed to be.
See, I wouldn't have put it on my list just because what we did play was really enjoyable. They just didn't have an end game for it, and the game they did have was just too short. But what was there, I really enjoyed.
Right. It just ended too early. I really hope that Anthem 2.0 is BioWare's Final Fantasy 14. I want them to kill it with a meteorite and then come back with something much better.
Absolutely. Oh, I agree. It's not. I don't have ill will towards the game. I really hope Anthem 2.0 comes back to be this juggernaut of a game, and it's just awesome that we can all play and have fun with. I really hope that ends up being the case.
Yep, agreed. Yep, I'm definitely. It was good drop in, drop out type multiplayer co-op game, and it just ended too quick for me. We got like 2 weeks out of it, and I think we actually played for another day or two. What was it, Shane? Maybe about 5 or 6 months ago, we picked it up again, and maybe you and I played for like a day or half a day.
Oh yeah, and had a damn good time doing it. It was
the same thing over and over and over.
Exactly. Now, again, I put the blame on the publisher because they're notorious for pushing, and even if it's not ready, just get it out there. We'll fix it later. That's horse shit. That's my biggest problem with this last 2 generations is, well, we'll throw a patch on it. Stop it. Stop patching it. Just make it right the first time.
Right. I agree. But it's an unfortunate thing too that BioWare is not the BioWare we used to know. And a lot of these developers have kind of turned into that. Not what we grew up with. And it's unfortunate, but I guess it is what it is. So my number 1 is Metal Gear Solid, not 2, because I actually like 2 a lot, even though they had Raiden in there. But I ended up liking Raiden in the end, even though he was naked for the first half of it.
It's pronounced Raiden, by the way.
Raiden, whatever. Was actually Phantom Pain. And this was one I disliked. And the main reason is I love Metal Gear. So don't get me wrong about that. And I liked the Phantom Pain. I did. But there was more of it about it I disliked. I don't think Metal Gear should have gone open world. I like the story structure and the kind of linear structure of Metal Gear. That's what I loved about 1 and 2. They kind of had an open world type-ish. Not really open world, but they had big environments, and that was fine. Going through a big environment's fine, but I didn't like that this was just completely open world. I didn't like that aspect of it. I wish it would have been more linear and more just kind of stage structured and more story focused, really, than anything. Kind of like the other ones were. That's one of the things I love about, especially 4, which is one of my favorites.
I was about to say, if they would have kept more of that 4 route, that game would have been just sweet. Because I've played through 4 countless times. It was just that good.
Oh yeah, I love 4. And I love 1 and 2, and I love 4. And Snake Eater is good. I haven't played a ton of Snake Eater, so I'm not going to comment on whether I liked it or not. I have it. I just never played through it all the way.
Snake Eater is absolutely fantastic because out of all of the games, that one has the most searchable. I mean, just randomly go over here and just look at something, and it's like, oh my god, that's hilarious.
Right.
And Snake
Eater was kind of more open world too, from what I've seen, the little I've played from it and what I've seen from it. But it's more like, it's not necessarily open world. It's more like just larger environments, right? Yeah. And even if they wanted to go that way with Phantom Pain, that would have been fine. If they just went with the larger environment thing, I would have been fine with that. But it was just like, one thing I hated about the Phantom Pain 2 was you choose a mission and then you had to fly out to it, do it, and then you flew back. And just the downtime between flying back and forth between the rig. And I know you could do a couple of things while you're out there, but it was really, you had to go back and go out and, kind of to continue the story and various things like that. So it was really just like, especially the loading times, just waiting, flying on the helicopter and flying back and flying there. And it was just like, oh my goodness, is this ever going to stop? So I think that kind of hurt it too. And maybe that's the technology, we're going to have, faster load time supposedly with these new consoles coming out. So maybe that'll, maybe the Phantom Pain would load quicker. Maybe that would be better. But I think it was just that and just the open world aspect. I kind of like the kind of linear story driven.
Well, I would definitely agree with that because it's just not meant that way for that type of game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think a lot of these story-driven games lose a lot of themselves when they go open world because we're used to them giving us a story and us immersing in the story, and the action stuff almost takes a sideline, but not wholly. But whenever you do like an open world, you're like, hey, go here, and you can the story has to be fluid enough to incorporate you doing things out of turn or out of order than what the initial storyline or panel board would have been. So I feel that they lose themselves a lot when they do stuff like that.
Absolutely. There's not too many games that can pull off large open world with a heavy story element. Look at Grand Theft Auto 5. It was probably the only wide open world story driven game this last generation last 2 generations that was able to pull off such a massive story that made you want to play the story, made you want to do all the side crap, made you want to do everything. I mean, it was almost a perfect game.
Yeah, Rockstar has definitely got they have the mantra down, right? They have it down to where you can create an open world environment and have a story. And they have that aspect of it down. Even with Red Dead Redemption, and even with Red Dead Redemption 2, which I didn't like as much as Red Dead Redemption 1, but everything you did, I think one of the things that Rockstar has compared to even Metal Gear Phantom Pain is like every little side, in a lot of these open world games, is that like every little side mission correlates to the main story, right? There's something that involves the main story in these side stories. And I think even Red Dead Redemption and Grand Theft Auto and everything like that, Rockstar has got it when it comes to that. They make sure that a side quest somehow incorporates itself into the main theme and the main story.
Right.
Even if it's a side quest,
Yep. Red Dead Redemption. Yeah, I like the original one better than the second one. The second one was much prettier, obviously, since it's newer, but I couldn't tell you what the story was for the most part for Red Dead Redemption 2. I remember playing it, going from one thing to the next. By the time I got to the third little camp area, I was already over with the do this, go to this new area, build it up, then have to move on for some reason, rinse, repeat, just keep doing that. It had gotten old for me, but for the most part, Rockstar does do great. That one was no exception. There was some really funny side missions and stuff. I think I remember most of the side quests more than I remember the main storyline of that game, though. Unfortunately,
I would agree with you there. I mean, I think a lot of the side quests in Red Dead Redemption 2 were better than the main story quests. A lot of them.
There was too much taking away from the story on that one, in my opinion. I think you were forced to do some side stuff, and then you kept just going at it, and then the main story just dwindled away. By the time you got back into it, it didn't really matter because you had done 1,000 of the things.
Yeah, with Red Dead Redemption 2, I beat it, and I mean, one of the main things about Red Dead Redemption 2 is it as far as the story goes, is it didn't get me as much as the first one did, right? I wanted to know what happened. In Red Dead Redemption 2, I really didn't care. I kind of knew what was going to happen. It was kind of really easy to figure out what was going to come down the line. And what I imagined was going to happen is exactly what happened, right? It was kind of easy to figure out. So it didn't have a lot of mystery to it, and it kind of tried to recycle itself as the story-wise as the first one, and I think that's also where it. But and again, I think what hurt Red Dead Redemption 2 was it was a prequel to the first one, right? And so you kind of know where, and I think that's where you kind of know what's going to happen, is because if you beat Red Dead Redemption 1. To the finish, and you kind of learn about the gang and everything like that. Playing the second one, which is a prequel to the first, you kind of start to figure out how the route's going to go, right? Because they have to match it up to the second or to the original. I think if it was more of a sequel, that would have probably been better, but oh well.
Yep, I look forward to see what Rockstar does next. I mean, they do good games, and I have a tendency to play most of what they put out.
Right. Well, what they're doing next is putting out Resident Evil or Grand Theft Auto 5 on the PlayStation.
I want something new. Let's say that I want something new.
Yeah. God, that game's gonna live forever.
Coming out on the PlayStation 5 and leaps through.
Yeah. Eventually, they're gonna get it on the kids' Amazon tablet. Now it's coming out.
The kids go Amazon Fire.
Yeah,
you can now play it on your smartwatch.
Yeah, that game will be around forever. It'll be like Back to the Future. We have 6 TVs on, and you see a commercial for Grand Theft Auto 5 20 years from now.
Yeah.
Yeah, on your Fitbit. It's an exercise. You run from the police.
Yeah.
And when you're beating a prostitute, you just shake your arm real fast.
Yeah.
Just throw on your 3D headset and go out in the yard and play Grand Theft Auto 5.
You take your headset off, and the police are really there.
Yeah.
That bus is really coming at you.
There is a dead
felt like I got hit by ground. Mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mom, I wasn't here.
But yep, I'm a big fan of story-driven games. But those games that just try to do open world, I feel the same way you do. You get lost in stuff. Very few of them can pull it off and keep the story in line. You know, I think one of my favorite open world games is probably the Far Cry Primal. That game was hilarious.
Primal was great.
It was hilarious, and it was open world, and it didn't feel too much like an open world. It wasn't one of those ones where I felt like I was just going around doing the same thing, rinse, repeat over and over. It actually felt pretty good, and the whole thing with what was his name, Riki or whatever the dude. Yeah, he was like, I want you to try out my new rock armor, and I need you to hit me or charge this, throw this elephant at me or whatever. And just the whole thing is just great from start to finish to that whole series. That was a good open world one. But then people do it, other companies do it, and it just falls flat. It just feels like it's repetitive. You get your abilities in the first 4 or 5 missions, and then it's same thing over and over and over.
Right.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. I agree. I haven't played Primal. I have it. I just haven't played it. So one of these days I'll get down to playing it. I haven't played a lot of the Far Cries, except for 5 since Far Cry 2. I beat 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And then I never played 3, which a lot of people liked. And I never played 4. And I never played Primal. And then I played 5, which I liked.
We
5.
did play 4, Nick.
Did we?
One night. Yep, we played it on PlayStation with Steve. It was like a try. Yeah, it was like a trial thing. We got to play 2 hours, and we're like, "Yay!" Then we wrecked or something, and we gave up.
I must have forgot about that.
Yeah, most people didn't like it.
Me.
I mean, they do make good games. I mean, Far Cry, the latest one, the Far Cry 5, and then the New Dawn. I mean, those were, I liked them. I played them. I think we played those together, didn't we? We played New Dawn together, I think, didn't we? And 5.
No, I never played New Dawn.
Me and Nick played 5, and I think you guys played 5 as well.
I think you and Russ played New Dawn.
Yeah, because that was the what happens after 5 type thing.
Right, because that was a 2-player co-op. Well, I think 5 was 2-player co-op as well. So.
Yeah.
But the new one looks really good. The
5 was the
Far Cry
one where
6
we
looks
saved
really
the
good.
Testy Festy.
Yeah, the Testy Festy was probably one of the more funniest side questions you can do.
Oh
yeah.
Yep.
But
and 6 looks good.
Yeah, 6 was good. 6 was good, and so hopefully it'll be good. But it does look good. Okay, well, that was our top 5 and top 5 great games of all times, and our top 5 dislikes games. And you can see the different aspects of each person. You know, I'm the more retro oriented one, and then Patrick's more RPG oriented one, and Shane's more
all over the damn place.
All over the place. Yeah, I'm surprised Pong wasn't on there.
That was going to be a bonus.
No, I would have. You know, if we were going back to the Atari, I would have picked Pitfall, because Pitfall was a great Atari game.
Yep.
If we were going to go back that far, Pong was good too, but Pitfall's got to be where it's at. All right. So from this point on, we'll just talk about just gaming things in general. Anything that anybody wants to bring up, any sort of gaming stuff that anybody wants to talk about. Today was Sony's State of Play, which I watched earlier today. Really wasn't a whole lot on there. There was a lot of PS4 stuff, which they said that was going to be on there. They showed off the brand new Crash Bandicoot 4, which looks really fun. Kind of looks like the old Crash Bandicoot back in the original. Looks like a lot of fun. I think a lot of Crash Bandicoot fans will enjoy that. They also showed off Hitman 3, and I think the original trilogy. I'm not 100% sure, but definitely Hitman 3 is going to be a PSVR or have PlayStation VR abilities.
The entire trilogy will be PlayStation VR capable.
Yeah, and that's cool. That's cool. I would like to play that game in VR and see how that is. That sounds pretty cool.
Yep, but in VR, you get to be the victim.
You're one of the people that would be really cool, wouldn't it?
To have somebody
like
come up and
where
strangle
you play like it's like Hitman. No, like where it's Hitman, right? And it's multiplayer, but it's through the VR, where one person's the hitman and the rest of them are the people in the crowd, right? Because that's how the whole scenario goes. Is you have like certain people in the crowd that you got to talk to or interact with to get information out of, and so you kind of got to blend in with the crowd, being the normal people down there, and then one person's the hitman trying to figure everything out.
Yeah, that would be interesting, if you played as the hitman, or whoever's playing the hitman, and then the other people are maybe the guards in the scenario, kind of like a Roblox game where you got the shooters versus the type stuff. It would be interesting to be that, and just you would have to figure out which person, how to avoid the actual players that are the guards, because you don't have to then worry about dumb AI. The guards are actually going to see the hitman unless you're in some type of disguise, and they're going to know immediately that you're the hitman and just kind of keep a closer eye on you.
Sounds like a little blend of Splinter Cell and Assassin's Creed 3.
Right. But basically it's It's basically almost in a sense just like one of those horror games where you have one good guy or one bad guy and a bunch of good guys trying to escape or something.
Yep, Left for Fred.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be necessarily Hitman, but yeah, I mean, that would be pretty cool type of game. But yeah, it's really cool to see that Hitman's going to have some VR support. That'll be interesting. They also announced Braid Anniversary. I don't know if you remember Braid. It was back on the 360. It was kind of like the platformer where you could pause and reverse and forward time. It was a puzzle game. They supposedly have an anniversary edition coming out where you can, I don't know, I think it's supposed to be the same game but some added stuff, maybe some added levels and better visuals and things like that. So that's cool for the people that like Braid. I know there was quite a few people that liked that game, and it's supposed to be a pretty good puzzle game. I never really did get into it back in the day, but neat.
Neat it is.
Yes. And Spelunky 2, which, again, I never really got into the first one, so I don't know if it's any good. And then they had the Vader Immortal release date announced for that, which is where you can play as Darth Vader in the VR, which looks really cool. It comes out on August 25th. He's sold separately?
Lung disease sold separately.
Oh yes. The burnt. If you really want to get the, they airlift you out to a volcano site where you get to lay in the lava, burn your arms and legs.
You can play the game VR while you're on the volcano.
That's right. Oh, it hurts for real.
Yeah,
It feels so real.
I really want to play it, but I'm just not sold on the VR stuff yet. I mean, well, on top of that, it costs too much money for me right now. But I want to play so many VR games. It's getting to the point where I've got to do something. My only concern is that I want to play Vader Immortal, but I also want to play the new Half-Life, and I'm like, I can't play them both because they are not in the same thing, So really the big thing with me for VR is that it's expensive to get into, especially the wide range of consoles. And if you want to play this game, it's only on PC. If you want to play this, it's only on PlayStation VR. So that's a big hurdle for me right now. Because it's like buying another console or two consoles in that aspect. If I wanted to play on PC and I wanted to play on PlayStation.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. With the Half-Life one being on Steam, the Vader Immortal is on computer as well, and that's already been out for a while. But yeah, I mean, entry into PC VR gaming is, almost $1,000 to get it going. Plus, you have to have a machine that is capable of doing VR and handling that. So, I mean, they do have those headsets that are all-in-ones that can do the VR gaming, and it has all the hardware pretty much within the headset. But it still is expensive, right? And where PSVR is a cheaper way, is probably the cheapest way to go. But it doesn't have the Half-Life VR game, which is unfortunate. Hopefully one of these days it will. That'd be great because I'd love to play that game as well.
Yeah, I love all the videos for it. I just can't wait to play it. But
right,
my computer's not a slouch, but it is definitely not up to snuff to hooking in a VR system to play it. So I would have to start there and build up, and then just rinse and repeat. I spent all my money on my new computer, but I can't afford the VR stuff, and now I got to wait to afford the VR stuff.
Right, exactly. Yeah, mine is. There was a thing where you could check to see if your laptop or desktop was ready for Half-Life Alyx, and mine hit everything fine except for one thing, and I can't remember what it was at the time, but I think that one thing was like a no-go that it didn't hit. So I'm like, that sucks.
All right.
Well, VR is definitely cool. To a point, they got a bunch of shovelware on all the VR systems, so you got to watch that. But man, there are those Alyx and Vader. It's just so many cool games on it.
For sure, yeah, for sure. And the job simulator and vacation simulator, those games are really fun and funny to play. And some of the shooters are pretty cool on the VR system. So it really is just kind of finding those games that really tend to be really awesome, and there are some VR ones that are pretty cool. But again, like you said, you have to go through the shovelware because there is a lot of crap out there. So and Beat Saber's still fun. That's still a fun game.
The worst part about Beat Saber is you think you got rhythm and you're looking good in the game, but when somebody records you, oh my God, you look like Michael J. Fox tap dancing.
You look like a doofus sitting there, But you're jamming out, especially if you if you put the earbuds in your ears and you can hear the music and it's all loud and you're just going and you're hitting the things and you just got to imagine yourself outside your body, looking at yourself, going, "Oh my God, what a goober!"
Oh, you don't got to.
Then your wife shows you that video and you just look so stupid.
That's all right. You're having fun, right? That's all that matters.
That's all right. Who here remembers doing the Kinect Dance Central game?
Exactly. Oh man, I played tons of Dance Central. I love Dance Central on the Kinect.
Yep.
Oh yeah, we were God, we were sad. I'm not gonna lie. But it was fun.
Just all those games. I mean, I'm pretty sure you guys remember playing like the Wii boxing. I can remember the first time we played that in a group. It looked like a bunch of spastic drunks just punching in the air and swinging and out of breath after like 2 seconds.
I knocked the living crap out of my son. Oh, damn, boy. Don't get so close.
One thing about Wii Sports was that was the only game that I can think of that you could get anybody to play.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even your parents and grandparents and stuff, you could get them to go up there and play the golf or whatever, or the bowling. I mean, it was just, you could get anybody to play Wii Sports.
Yeah, there's nobody who could turn down a game of Wii bowling. Nobody.
Yep.
Exactly.
That used to be our breakout thing back in the day when we had corporate Christmas parties. Back in the day, we'd break out the old Wii and everybody's drunk at the corporate Christmas party, and they're trying to do Wii boxing or Wii bowling or something like that.
Oh yeah, and have like a Wii bowling tournament.
Mm-hmm.
We used to have them all the time. Yeah, that was for sure. I mean, it's still a great game. I haven't played Wii bowling in a while, but I bet you if I popped it in now, I would still have fun playing it. So. But back to the state of play, they did show off Control. Control is coming out with their new expansion, and it's on August 27th, and it shows for PlayStation 4, which I'm assuming more than likely Xbox as well on that same day. Right now they're only showing PS4, but I'm pretty sure Xbox as well. But this one has to do with Alan Wake as well.
Yeah.
So it does incorporate Alan Wake into this edition of Control. And if I were to tag on a top part of my top, not top 5, but definitely top games, Alan Wake would definitely be in there. I love Alan Wake. Still one of my favorites.
American Nightmare is one of the very few DLC that I've bought that I just so happy about. Great game. If you've never played it, you gotta try it.
Yeah, Alan Wake in general. If you've never played Alan Wake, play Alan Wake. It is a fantastic game from start to finish, and even Control. Control is a fantastic game. I love Control, and they came out with their first expansion, which I haven't played yet, and I need to. I already have it downloaded and ready. I just need to get on there and start playing it, and I'm definitely excited for this one because it does have to do with Alan Wake in Control. So that's awesome.
Right.
So that was pretty much. I mean, also the state of play did show off Godfall. That was the only PlayStation 5 title that I saw that they showed off. They did show off some other titles, which are, they did show off. I guess the other PlayStation 5 title they did show off was that bug snacking one, where you can eat the bugs and turn it into different. There's like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs game, pretty much. We could turn into the different fruit and different bugs and stuff, depending on what your character ate or other characters ate. They just showed that one off, but they showed off Godfall at the end, and showed off gameplay for Godfall. And, for me, Godfall is one that it's being designed by Gearbox, and Godfall is one that I still am not 100% behind. I do like Gearbox for most of the games they make. and this one does look cool, but I don't know. It just still hasn't gotten. It just hasn't gotten me yet. You know, I've seen gameplay and various things. And I'm like, I don't know. You know, I don't know if that's one I really want to play. It almost reminds me a lot of the style of gameplay and stuff. Kind of reminds me a lot of in the Gearbox toolbox. It reminds me of Borderlands, but just without the guns, right? And not the visuals, but just without the guns. That type of gameplay, or Destiny, but without the guns. Again. Yep. You know, more melee, and those games are fine and all. It's just like, I don't know if I want another one of those. You know, I want something a little bit different. So I don't know if Godfall is going to be that different, or if it's just going to be the same thing but with swords and boards instead of guns.
Yep, it's interesting. It looks interesting, yeah. And you know, it just depends. The closer we get to it, the more content will come out about what it is. I'm interested to see more. It's probably not going to be something that I'll be able to get right when it comes out because I'm not that excited about it neither. But, you know, we're still a little early on. I mean, what do we got? I mean, we don't got too much time. If they're going to call it a launch title, we only got, you know, estimated, 3 months at most on it maybe?
Right. I mean, yeah, they're still calling for holiday 2020. So, I mean, the holiday's coming. You know, it's already August. And it's going to be here before you know it. So they need to start getting those pre-orders and release dates out for Xbox and PlayStation to tell us, you know, when we can start pre-ordering their stuff.
Yep. They got to hurry up because my money is hurting my hand and I need to give it to them.
Right, exactly. I want to give you my money. Just tell me when I can pre-order this stuff. Come on.
But the only time we have ever had a release date given and the actual release date being within this close of a time period is back on Dreamcast. And look how that worked. Amazing system, but they dropped the ball. Even the game developers were like, "Oh, you want this shit now?" And
well, that was actually Sega Saturn that did that.
Sorry,
Sega
Saturn.
When it was pretty much announced at E3 during the E3 of Sega Saturn was the day that it came out.
Yep.
And a lot of retailers and various things didn't know that Sega Saturn was going to come out that day.
Mm-hmm.
Surprise!
Yeah, they're like, "Oh, we need to put these on the shelves."
What's in the box?
I got nothing to play on it.
Places, the problem was a lot of places didn't have them yet. And the places that didn't know they needed to put them out on the shelves, you know. So, yeah, that was a bad idea for Sega when it came to Sega Saturn. And then with the Dreamcast did have a release date. I remember all the commercials back in the day, and you know, for me, the Dreamcast is still one of my favorite consoles. I love the Dreamcast, and I wish it would have
succeeded better.
Yeah, because I would have loved to see a Dreamcast too. But we'll probably never see another Dreamcast again. I don't think we'll ever see another Sega console again. So.
Yeah, probably not.
I would like to see them do a Dreamcast Mini.
Yeah, I would too. I love the Sega Genesis Mini. I love all the minis, all the different minis that came out. The only one that I don't have is the TurboGrafx Mini that came out recently. And I tried to look for it online, and you can't find it. You cannot find it to buy. I've looked for it, but there's no place that's selling it. It's like it came out for a short period of time, and that was it. You can still buy because it is not region locked, so you can still buy the Japanese one, which does. I think everything's in English, so you can still play it and everything like that. But it's more expensive, and of course you have to ship it from Japan or wherever. So of course the shipping costs are going to be a lot higher. And I'm like, well, I'll just wait till maybe it goes back in stock here in the U.S.
Right. Yeah. I like the concept of the minis and everything because you can just plug and play into new TVs and stuff like that. But I really like the old larger consoles and so the mini kind of I only own the Sega Genesis Mini, but I would prefer to own like the full console. But the problem is the investment it takes to get those to work with a modern day TV is just so rough, and they just don't look as good even when you spend like a couple $100 on a converter. They just don't look as good. And the minis seem to have, you know, obviously they can program the emulator so they have the right aspect ratio on these larger TVs and stuff. So,
no, I prefer my PS2 hooked to my CRT, or my PS1 or, anything basically before HDMI. It looks better. It feels right on a CRT.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way to go. I mean, if you can, and the best way to get yourself a hold of a CRT is just go garage selling.
Yard sale.
Yep.
That's where we got ours.
I mean, you're going to find someone selling an old CRT that they're going to sell it for $2 or $3 or whatever, and you can pick it up super cheap and take it home. And that's the best way to go for those old retro consoles. If you want to invest in old retro consoles, the games, depending on the console, right? If you go GameCube, you're going to spend an arm and a leg, not for the GameCube, but especially for the games, because the games are still like, Mario Sunshine is still like $60, right?
You would
Every
think
game
Nintendo's
for the
still
game
selling them, right?
Oh yeah,
You would
every
think
game
so.
for the GameCube is twice as much as a damn GameCube. It's ridiculous.
Right, and one of the ones I want for GameCube is Eternal Darkness, and I can find it. Yeah, I can find it just fine. But if I want to drop like $80 for it, I think it's what they're selling it for. Which I don't. I want Eternal Darkness and I want to play it, but I don't want to spend that much for it. So,
and playing in an emulator isn't.
Well, that's the mission, guys. I need you to find me a 65-inch CRT TV. At a garage.
About 65.
You want one of them old projectors?
Projector TVs.
No, because then I won't be able to play the games with the guns.
All the 65-inch projectors back in the day. Yeah. You have to get like 20, like mine, which is like I think a 27-inch sharp. And what's funny is I think I had that same TV back in the day, that 27-inch sharp. So.
Oh yeah. I've got my 22-inch Memorex, and that thing looks fantastic.
I don't have any CRT TV, so.
Yeah, you get one because and yeah, I have the Dreamcast and the Super Nintendo or the Nintendo 64 hooked up to it, and it just looks so much better than anything else. And my GameCube I do have hooked up to an HD TV, which it'll look better on the CRT, but it's not as bad as some of the older ones. Some of the older ones you just can't read them on a HD TV. It just looks horrible. You can't read the text, or all the visuals are blurry. So you got to get yourself a CRT. But that was pretty much the state of play. That was all the highlights from it. They showed a couple other games that I don't know. For me personally, they didn't really look like anything worth anything, and nothing I really cared about. They did have some. I think some of the other ones they showed were some indie titles, which great for those indies. It's just not my flavor of game. So that was pretty much it on the state of play. So another bit of news as well is that the Final Fantasy VII Remake did come out with some free DLC. Looks like some
rings,
Mako, some bangles, and a Mako crystal, which we have no idea what that does. Doesn't say. So
it makes you pretty.
It makes you shiny. Yes.
It puts you back in a dress.
Dance scene.
Yeah, it puts you back in a dress.
Yes, for the whole game. Put you back in a dress.
You get to be Pretty Cloud for the whole game.
Well, the bangles are kind of cool because they have the Shinra bangle, which, okay, that's cool. They have the Cornello bangle, or Cornello bangle, which I think is one of the guys in the game, right? I'm pretty sure.
Cornello is the main bad
Yeah, he's the leader of
that one town.
The walled market.
Yeah, he's the
wall market.
Right, he's the
Don Corneo
guy there, Don Corneo, right? And the Superstar belt, but that's got to be for the honeybees. The Midgar bangle, which okay, and then the Mako crystal, which again, it doesn't say what the Mako crystal does as far as what we're looking at, so I don't know what that does, but
it's part of a set of beads. Find out later.
Yes, if you have the Final Fantasy VII Remake, you can go download it now. It is available, and you can check out for yourself what the Mako Crystal is.
And then somebody send us a message and let us know.
Yes, even though we do own the game, but we've already beaten it, so we probably won't figure out what that is. But if you do, yeah, let us know what that is, what that's for. Sure, we'll find out at some point, but
one of us will play it.
One of us will play it. Right now, Patrick has my copy of Final Fantasy, so I can't figure it out for myself, but he could play my copy and figure it out. Let us know what it is. All right. Do you guys have anything else that you wanted to talk about? Anything else that you wanted to discuss? And this is pretty much open forum at this point.
This weekend's Microsoft's big gaming weekend, which means they release a bunch of stuff for free to everybody who doesn't have Game Pass or Live to get to play. That means you can play multiplayer games without having an Xbox Live subscription, which is kind of cool. I think Microsoft doing their games as a service is probably what's allowed me to play a lot of games that I would never have played. So yeah, I think if you have an Xbox and you don't subscribe to Live or Game Pass, it might be a good weekend if you got to play something. I think it goes from the 6th to the 10th.
Yeah, so, I think that's right.
So definitely a good little thing. They got quite a good selection. A lot of what I would consider AAA titles on there as well that they're letting people play for free who don't have either of those services. So definitely a good thing. I think Microsoft's doing right by their console owners by giving people a little taste of what they can have if they want to pay, the $9.99 or the $15 a month for either or subscription. I personally do Game Pass Ultimate, so I can get all of it, and even on my PC. So I definitely utilize it a lot for me and my kid.
Absolutely. Yeah, Game Pass is something that Sony and Nintendo really need to look closely at doing something because it's an amazing deal. It will get you to play games that you haven't even thought about. We played Farm Simulator, for God's sakes, and we had a blast.
All right. Yeah, for sure. That was definitely one that I wouldn't even think about playing was Farm Simulator, but Farm Simulator is an actually really fun game.
Yep.
Yes.
A joke that turned into us playing something.
Yeah.
For several days and for several hours a day.
We built a whole farming enterprise.
That's right. We had several crops and everything.
And then turned around and got 19.
Yes, and that made us buy 19. So that's another good thing about Game Pass is it kind of it turns you on to into a game or even into a franchise in this case where we liked 17 so much. 19 came on sale and we're like, hey, let's pick up 19. We liked 17 a lot.
We wanted to get Farm Simulator 18, but it had Locust.
Yes, the zombie locust.
Yep. But no, Game Pass is so good. I recommend 2 games right now. Is it Carry On or Carrion? And Indivisible. Just fun as hell.
It'll be unfortunate if Sony and Nintendo do it because then I'm going to go broke having to pay for 3 subscriptions. But
I only play Sony's exclusives, so I'll just take the hit.
Well, Sony has the PlayStation Now, which is fine and all, but the PlayStation Now is actually horrible. Let me put that back. Let me take that back. It's not fine. It's horrible. I've tried PlayStation Now, which is the streaming old PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1 games to your console. It works, yes, not well, but it works. Unlike xCloud, which is coming out for Xbox in September, which I have tried, actually works really well. Your game streams most of the time. I mean, there are a few hiccups there and here and there for latency and various things, and that's understandable over the internet. But not unlike PlayStation Now. PlayStation Now, I've tried quite a few games on there, and most of them would either stop or just be they would look like total garbage where I couldn't figure out what was going on, or they just hiccup and have a lot of problems. Where as xCloud, I would have a few hiccups here and there, but most of the time I could play the game perfectly fine without any issue, and with full fidelity. no downgrading of the graphics or anything like that. So, and I tried a wide variety of games. xCloud or streaming your games may not be your thing, but for sure, I even tried Stadia, and Stadia, Stadia, unlike PlayStation Now, actually did a lot better. Did pretty much the equivalent of the xCloud as far as streaming goes. But, of course, Stadia is more of an a la carte system where you have to buy the games. You can't just download and play them like xCloud, which will give you pretty much every game that's in Game Pass that you can download and play through any sort of device that you can stream onto. So,
and you could also do the streaming of your own games that you have bought through your system.
Right. Which is not xCloud, it's just game streaming, which they do have now.
Yeah, which is, to me, is virtually the same thing, but they both work fantastic.
Right.
For the most part.
And,
they do.
Yep. And Nintendo has the Nintendo Switch Online, which is a pretty good deal. They have a lot of Super Nintendo, SNES games and NES games on there that, it's definitely worth playing through. It's got a lot of nostalgia feels on it. It's a good one. I don't play my Switch nearly as much as I would like to, but it's got a lot of nostalgia games that I would like to get into again. And there's just, come on, Super Mario World, F-Zero, Star Fox, Super Mario Kart. Come on, those are great games.
I grabbed that Switch, and a lot of times I go to the bathroom. If I got a feeling this is going to be a long evening, I'll just go in there and play Donkey Kong all night.
And that's why we don't use this Switch.
We don't play with Shane's Switch when we bought one.
Nobody borrows the Switch.
What I do like about the Nintendo streaming services, or the Nintendo, the Nintendo Online, is the retro controllers. I want some of those so bad to play with my console. I want them so bad. It's hard to bite the bullet on paying for those since I don't play my Nintendo as much. But for those SNES and the Super Nintendo and the Nintendo Entertainment retro controllers, I want one. I want them so bad, even just to have them without having to play with them. Nintendo's is doing all right. I think that their streaming service could use some more games, but I think they're working on it. And it's not unreasonably priced. So.
No, you $20 a year. You get a good value, and for what you get, it's just all those classic games for $20 in a year. I'll take it.
Yeah, I think the last I'd heard they were over like 60 or 70. I think there were like 70 or 80 titles on there, something like that. For $20 a year, that's not bad at all to play those.
Yep, just give me the Mario All-Stars 2. That's all I want. It ain't out yet. But I know Nintendo's working on it, you bastards.
Right. Yeah, it's they have a lot of games on there. It's $20 a year, which is not bad. Especially with all the games you can, with all the games that you can download and play. They're adding games here and there. There's a lot of games I wish they add on there that they don't, but for $20 a year, can't really argue too much. So,
for retro gamers, it's in. Where else can you get that kind of a deal for Nintendo and Super Nintendo games?
Right, exactly. And going back on the Game Pass thing, when you were talking about the games you can play free for this weekend, plus not having to have Xbox Game Pass, they also have the Game Pass games coming here in August. Which right now out at this current time is Darksider Genesis. That's the another entry in the Darksider franchise. This is the top-down kind of twin-stick shooter, two-player co-op online, I believe. It's supposed to be pretty good. It Lurks Below, which I think is an indie game. I've heard of it, but I haven't played it. The Dark Pictures anthology Man in the Dan, which is a hilarious game. It's not supposed to be hilarious, but it's funny. And that is co-op, two-player, I think.
Yeah, unless you do unless you play like the theater mode or whatever, where everybody's in the same room type thing.
Right, and you just watch it or whatever. Trailmakers, I don't know what Trailmakers is. Undermine, I haven't heard of that one either.
Trailmakers is when you drink too much and you can't make it to the bathroom.
That's true. And then Xeno Crisis, which is kind of a Contra type 2D shooter, I believe.
And then we still have a few to look forward to, right?
Yeah, and then after that is well, according to this list, it says on today as well is the Final Fantasy VII HD remake, which I thought was coming on the 13th, but according to this information I'm looking at, it says today. Well, I'm not 100% sure on that, so I have to check that out. And then Tell Me Why, which was introduced at the last Microsoft conference, is coming out on August 21st, which is the new Don't Nod game. The people that made what's that game? Those kind of Telltale type games. I can't remember the.
Talking about Captain Spirit.
Yeah, the Captain Spirit game, and then Life is Strange. And
Life is Strange, yeah.
Yeah, so this is the new one by them, which those are pretty good games. So
Life is Strange is real good. Really liked Captain Spirit.
I didn't play Captain Spirit or Life is Strange 2. I really need to because I love Life is Strange 1. That was a fantastic story and a fantastic game, and I really want to play.
Where's the orange?
Did you buy the whole Life is Strange 2 sale bundle when it came on sale not too long ago?
No, I didn't. Not me personally. I played through and bought the Life is Strange Chapter 1, and then Before the Storm, which was the prequel to Life is Strange. I bought that too, and I only played through a little bit of that. I liked it, but it was I think just beating the first. I think if that would have came out first, it would have been better to kind of see what kind of leads up to Life is Strange. So kind of knowing what happened through Life is Strange, it was kind of weird just playing kind of more. It was more like filler and backstory, really. And it was just like, I don't really care much about the backstory part. It's still a good game. Don't get me wrong. It's just, I think if you were to play Life is Strange, you should maybe play Before the Storm first to kind of get the, because it is a prequel to it. If you want to learn more about the story. Otherwise, just play Life is Strange 1.
All right. So. And Final Fantasy VII, the HD, it comes out August 13th is what they're saying is the release date on Game Pass for it.
Okay, that's what I thought. For some reason, they must have been a typo where I'm looking.
Yeah, I think it just shows there's a list. I guess, I've never played the Final Fantasy games. I've played a few of them, but not an extent. I just recently played the 7 remake, so this might give me an opportunity to play and see the whole story rather than the episodic chapter that we're getting now. I don't know how many pieces they're going to try to break it into, but at least I'll see a little bit more of what was changed in the overall whole story.
20 pieces, $60 a pop. Damn you, Square Enix.
Yeah, the remake, especially with the HD remake, one nice thing about it too is you can also, you can, if you wanted to just see the story in general, you can
put on all the buffs.
Yeah, you can put on all the buffs and make your characters all level 99, and you can also speed up time and various things of that nature through it. So, it's worth it.
Yeah, but I honestly, 7 had a better grind to it than 8 did. That's the only thing I will say that's better than 7. But don't tell my Final Fantasy 8 squad I said that.
You have a squad?
Yeah. Call themselves the Squall Squad.
So give me a chance to play that, especially because it's free. Because I have a Game Pass subscription, so it'll be one of those games that I look forward to playing, to play through it just to know the story. Because I really enjoyed the remake, not being able to play the previous games, and maybe I shouldn't play it because it sounds from you guys such a disappointment. But I enjoyed the remake, and
no, it is a disappointment to Shane. To me, it's one of the not the greatest, but one of the greatest Final Fantasies.
7 is fantastic.
8's one of the worst. But 7,
you eat dog turds in hell, buddy.
No, I've played a little bit of 8, and really, I haven't played all of 8, but really, there's you have the main characters, and then you have these 3 additional characters that are like soldiers or whatever, and for me in 8, their storyline is way more interesting than. So far, than the main people.
Man, I don't even think you're playing the right game.
No, the soldiers. You know, the soldiers that you play. That you kind of like flash back to, and you have the 3 soldiers in blue uniform.
Oh, yeah, I know you're talking about.
Yeah, those
I
3.
forgot about
like,
the flashbacks.
yeah, they're flashbacks, but I mean, like their stories seems more. I don't know. When I was playing it, I was more interested in what was going on with them than I was about what was going on with the main characters at that point.
Well,
So
I
That
will
was-
fight to the death for your opinion, but your opinion's wrong.
I will play and beat Final Fantasy VIII at some point because I do want to play through it because there are a lot of people that do say 8 is better than 7. You're not the only one. I have heard that online quite a bit.
And we are correct.
But they
There's
didn't
a lot of
remake
people that
8.
like 8 way more. So
Well, those people are bastards.
there's a lot more people that I think that don't like 8. Or like not necessarily don't like it, they just don't think it's as good as 7. But
Well,
Yeah.
they chose to remake 7 and not 8, right? Maybe
Yeah.
they'll remake 8.
or 9. 9's a great game too. So
9 was good, but I don't know. I didn't like it going back to that art style for the characters. It was
I
slightly
like it. It
more-
was just a return to the past, and it's like the old. Again, it was a nostalgia type thing with 9. You know, that was really the thing with it. The characters and just kind of going back to that old style Final Fantasy. Turn-based, just no glimmer and glam. It was just the regular old turn-based, and that's I love that personally. But that's just me.
I like
that
turn-based
is
combat.
just you.
Yeah.
I love
I mean,
turn-based
7 and 8
combat
had
as well.
turn-based combat too, but 7 and 8 tried to do things differently. 7 tried to do stuff with the materia and everything, and then 8 with the cards and
The Guardians.
like and the Guardians and stuff, and and 9 was really just about turn-based combat. There wasn't really much more.
9 was about one person who could use the materia / whatever the hell they called it, and that was
Right.
it. Pissed me off.
Then you had 15 where everybody just drove around the car taking pictures of everything.
That's right. God
Which-
dang it, Pronto, sit your ass down.
Which 15 was great too. I loved 15.
I beat
And
15.
I loved
Yeah.
13 as well. 13 was probably my least favorite, but I still
Honestly,
like.
I wouldn't put 13 in my least favorite column out of the Final
And
Fantasies.
which
I
one
thought
would you put in your least favorite?
in my least favorite, definitely 10, and then 10-2, and
No, you're crazy, man. 10 was, besides the voice acting, the rest of 10 was fantastic.
oh come on, Blitzball was
Yeah.
nobody
no,
beat Blitzball games.
no, yes, they did. No, you're just crazy. You just suck.
Yeah, whatever their Game Shark.
Well, I've got no stake in this. I played 7 the remake. I played 14 before the Reawakening and the Reawakening, and then I played 15.
Good.
So that's all I got.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll throw you. Everybody needs to play the Legend of Dragoon from PS1. That is one they need to bring back. That was such a phenomenon.
Yes, that was a great game. They'll never bring it back, but that would be great if they did.
Yep. That was one of the best RPGs in PlayStation, period.
It was a really good RPG, and I wish they would bring that. I wish they'd bring that back in Skies of Arcadia.
Yep,
and
that'd be another good.
as well. But they'll never bring those back. The great RPGs, and then Tales series, which Tales series is a really good series too. Which they're making the new one, which I think got delayed or something. Tales of Arise, I'm not sure, but we'll see what happens with that. Anywho, well, that sounds great. That was good. I think that's it for us. I want to thank Patrick and Shane for joining me today, and every time we do a podcast, they're going to be there, and we're going to talk about games and giving our aspects on games. This was It Tastes Different podcast. Thanks everyone for listening. Good night.